I think that was the bit that was making me the most unhappy. When you are working against your personal values, there's almost no saving in that. I mean, I suppose everybody has their price, but for me, that was probably the thing. I mean, it would be easy for me to say, yes, yes, it'll definitely work out, take the, but I don't. I think what I would say to them is it's not important what you're leaving behind and it's not important what you're going to. They're not the drivers. The driver is what you want in life.
Welcome to What Was, What Next. This is a podcast about the seasons of change that shape our lives. I'm Hina Thacker, and in each episode, I sit down with someone who has stepped away from what once was, be it a career, a role, a relationship, an identity, and is now finding their way through the uncertain space of what comes next. These are not stories of perfect reinvention. They're honest conversations about the in-between seasons, the moments when the old life no longer fits and the new one hasn't fully formed. If you're navigating a transition of your own, you're not alone here. There are many of us who have navigated through those same waters. So let's begin the conversation for today. Denise, thank you so much for being willing to have this conversation. For the listener, today I'm joined by somebody who, like many of us, has moved through different seasons in their professional life, maybe personal too. And rather than me reading out a long bio, I'd actually love to just invite you, Denise, to introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing, what kind of season you find yourself in, and we'll just take it from there. So welcome, Denise.
Thank you, Hina, and I'm really excited to be part of your conversation today. So, I'm Denise. I am an optometrist, and currently I work at the College of Optometrists, the General Optical Council, Oxford Eye Hospital as my professional role. And at home, I'm a mum of two boys, one of which is autistic.
So you have a full-on life, Denise. And tell everybody who's sitting on your lap right now, if they're still there.
He is still here. I have my dog. He is meant to be a non-bark breed, but he's turned into a little bit of a delinquent. So he's here just having some cuddles.
And we're very happy to have his energy with us today. So, to start off with, Denise, I knew you, we worked together for a little while. There was definitely a shift happening for you in the sense that I remember very clearly the day you knocked on my door and said, I've got something to say and I'm moving on. And things have shifted and changed for you work-wise since those days. What made you think this is not for me any longer and I need to kind of find something else? Yeah, do you mind talking about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. So, as with a lot of optometrists, I did my pre-reg at the time in London Aitchison. And around the time of the PQEs when I was doing it, you hardly got paid. So you sort of usually came back to your hometown and lived with your parents, which is what I did. So I started actually off in a multiple practice, but very quickly I moved into hospital eye service after a brief stint in locuming. And I did enjoy it. It was different in that you were sort of part of a bigger team. You worked very closely with your colleagues, whilst in primary care, I was finding that it was very much sort of me in a dark room on my own. And that was great. And I was very young when I moved into the hospital. I think I'd been in my career maybe 1 or 2 years and hadn't got any experience at all. Our department was very, I guess, informal is the right way to say it. We didn't necessarily follow all the processes, but at the time it was a small team and it worked for us. And I was at that hospital for, I think 15 years. And for many years, it just kind of ticked along at the same. But then as the department got bigger, as optometrists became more important in eye care, roles expanded and the department expanded and everything changed. At about, I guess, 10 or so years in, maybe just slightly less, I took on a management role. And that was a bit of a baptism of fire because for those of people who know the NHS, you don't necessarily have an awful lot of management training when you become a manager. You're kind of thrown into it at the deep end. Yes, there are things that you can do, but it tends to be after you've become a manager, do you get the training. So it was very much learning on the job, very much just following by example, I suppose. And I guess as clinicians, and certainly in my degree, I don't know if yours was the same, Hina, management really wasn't a big part of learning to be an optometrist. So that was interesting. And actually I really enjoyed it. And the more I looked into the management side of it, and particularly the leadership and the empowering staff, that was what I was finding was driving me. And then I guess when you have a passion, you look more into it. I realized that the informal style of management and the very not necessarily process led. I mean, I'm not a big fan of processes, but they are there for a reason. I think that is when it sort of really began to start jarring with my values.
I know what that means, but I'm interested in what were you feeling? Like, what was going on for you? What were you feeling when you were going into work, when you were being asked to do stuff and it jarred? What were you feeling? What were the
It
telltale
was
signs?
It just started with you were just unhappy and you were very aware that what you were being asked to do in certain situations was just not the right thing to do. And when you felt, and then I felt that I wasn't able to show the integrity I wanted to because this is what I wasn't asked to do. And then when you try to show this is the processes, these are here for a reason, because they hadn't really been used before. I guess it was met with some resistance, and then you're in a real dilemma, really, of what one part of you is telling you this is not the right thing to do, but then the other part of you, the practical part of you, says, "No, in this department we have to do it like this." And I think having that conflict, that's how it started.
Denise, was that so when you were feeling like this and there was this conflict going on inside of you, um, did you have somebody that you could talk to? How did you resolve that conflict into a decision that the role wasn't for you?
So I think it started with I moved away from the core team a little bit, not necessarily actively, but we were fortunate with ophthalmology having different departments. I could sit a little bit more in a different one, sort of slightly away from the core. And
Mm.
that helped a lot because they shared a lot of the same values as me. And so so for quite a while, I got some energy from there. But it was then finding that you really couldn't do both. You had to toe the line or it just wasn't working. So I think at that point, I realized I need to start thinking about something else. But this is where I'd worked pretty much my whole career. I didn't know anything else. I didn't know what I wanted. I I was scared, and I think that's probably where it is. And I was thinking it's probably just going to be like this in other places. But I started looking, and then I got really fortunate that I got my role at the college.
I mean, niece sense, rightly or wrongly, like you went from, yes, I moved away from the core team, um, and you started looking at what else was around and you got your role at the college. I was scared. So that's kind of the space of the what ifs. What if I do this and it doesn't work out? Or, what if I make a mistake career wise? There's a lot of what ifs in that space. And I just wonder if you're comfortable with it. What kind of what ifs were going on, if you like, for you between I'm going to leave?
Hmm.
That is the scary place. That is the place that people find that they feel quite lonely in that space. So I'm just wondering, is there anything that helped you? Is there anything that you're happy to share about what was going on for you between when you left and the role that you found at the college?
Yeah, there was a lot of things I did like about my role. I loved some of my colleagues. Some of my colleagues are still probably some of my closest friends. I didn't want to lead them. I mean, that they were the reason why I went to work every day because they were an amazing support. I felt that there was so much more I could do for that department and in that department. And I was thinking maybe I just need to wait for my moment. in that situation so that I can make it better. So there was a lot of what ifs. There was a lot of reasons why I shouldn't move and I should stay. It was really close to my house. In many ways, it was working really, really well. I think, so would I have stepped away had the other job not come up? I don't
Mm.
know, is the honest answer. I think I was lucky that the college job came up when it came up, and that was the catalyst to move because it seemed to work very well. But up until the last moment, even when I was accepting it, even when I knew I was going, I was still really, really unsure. This is what I'd known for my whole working career. In some ways, I felt I had some unfinished business there, and I was comfortable. I was safe. It wasn't difficult for me. It was well within my comfort zone. And I guess for me, the question was asking, is it worth the change? Am I that unhappy? Can I move? And I think, well, there's a couple of reasons. Pay was one of the reasons. Being able to work from home was another reason. So there's lots of practical reasons why I think I was able to convince myself that this was the reason to go. But it's not until actually after I left did I really truly appreciate what the right decision it was.
That's it, isn't it? That's so listening to you then in that moment, it was, do you feel like you had to take a leap of faith?
Yeah, absolutely. I needed in my head something very tangible to hang on to, i.e., if I write my pros and cons list, the pros would
Mm.
massively outweigh the cons.
Yeah.
But it's very difficult to put anything tangible on culture, on values, on your day to day happiness. They're not something you can score. And that's not something when you're moving to a new role that you know the answers to. Whilst you do know the answers to, the salary is higher, the
Right.
working hours are better. These are things that you can put a value on. But on the other hand, often those tangible things aren't the things that you need to change and are going to be
Mm.
mean the most to you, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah. Gosh, Denise, I don't think I've said this. Well, we've not had this type of conversation before, but when I think about all the people that I know, I think if somebody poked me in the middle of the night and woke me up in shock and said, "Who is somebody that you know has a strong sense of value?" I think I would say you, to be honest. So
Oh,
I really think I would. The culture and values fit is just as important, isn't it, as the pay and other working conditions. And that's the bit that we sometimes don't know how to articulate.
yes. And I think that was the bit that was making me the most unhappy. When you are working against your personal values, there's almost no saving in that. I mean, I suppose everybody has their price, but for me, that was probably the thing. And I remember asking when I was interviewing for my new job, and they say at the end, "Oh, do you have any questions?" I think the question I asked was to the people, well, what personal values do you bring to the
Mm,
organization that you hold true, that are important to you? Which I think they thought was slightly strange. But that was my way, I think, of trying to get a real sense of who these people are, what drives them, what gets them out of bed every day.
yeah. And Denise, looking back now, what do you think that season, the what if season that you were sitting in, on reflection, what do you think it was really asking of you?
I think it was asking me what is important to you. I think different people are driven by different things, and that is absolutely fine. Some people are driven by prestige, by money, by how convenient it is, whilst other people are driven by different things. And it's personal, it's not something that you can control necessarily. And it just really made me look at what is it that I'm wanting for life. For me, certainly after I had my children, who are one of them's not even a child anymore, but having had the children, I think that's when the shift really came. It became very much about what do I want to be able to look them in the eye and say that who I am or what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And I hadn't probably realized it, but I think it's at that point when I was trying to get the balance between what I wanted for me at home and what I wanted for me at work. And that's when the shift slowly started happening until it came to the head when I did make the change.
Yeah, I can imagine it was definitely a moment. So, when having made the decision, made the change, what did that change inside you, Denise?
It wasn't a one moment, and I think it took a long time. I
Mm.
went through what I would describe as, I think, almost a period of mourning. As I said, I loved my colleagues. I loved one of the departments there. I would have been more than happy to stay there, and it was still grieving that loss. When people talked about it, I still thought about it and thought, oh, I really miss it. I really miss it. But that was just a small part of it. And it took me quite a long time to let that go. And I don't know whether that's true of normal people or just me, but That's what I felt. Having been out of it now for nearly 5 years, I think, I know that I am happier with myself. And I think that's the big thing. I don't go into work and feel that conflict that I felt before. And to me, that's huge. I go in knowing that my new place of work, we're much more aligned in terms of values. We are much more on the same page in terms of what we want. And yes, although, as I said, I hate processes a lot of the time, and sometimes things can be a little bit too process led, knowing that it is fair and transparent. And they were the things that I was holding very true to me and very important to me. And I think that it's given me much more of a sense of contentment. So I am able to work on aspects of my job because I'm not having to fight against just showing up every day.
Yeah, that. So actually, what I'm hearing is it's almost, what your new place of work, what the college is offering you, the environment is contributing, right? So it's so important that when you move on to the next thing, it kind of the frequency, the vibe is something that you will thrive in.
hmm And it's about also, now we're talking, and again, I hadn't really particularly thought about it before or necessarily been asked the questions. Where I have always felt most comfortable is A, where the values is right, but B, when you can, it's going to sound like a complete cliche, Hina, but when you can really be yourself at work. So there were teams, as I said, where I worked before, where absolutely I could, and it was great. You felt really connected. But here, having such a great team and being able to truly bring your whole self in, I suppose, I think that again takes a lot of pressure off. It almost then, for me, doesn't really matter what the work is. I'm quite happy to do it because the work is, I guess for me, the work is secondary and it's the culture and the people and all of that. That is the primary drive for me.
Yeah, yeah. I just think when you're in a role, Denise, where you are responsible and have a role where you're making decisions to do with patients and patient welfare and your community that you serve with the college as well, all the optometrists that you serve in your role there. I just think what you said, bringing your whole self to work, yes, you're happy, and that is so important. But I think that when you're in one of the kind of giving roles, as I call it, where you're being of service to patients, to your community, I think when you bring your whole self to work, as you said, they benefit, the people that you are serving, because you're happier. Perhaps there's less conflict in your head about, I don't really want to be here. So you're fully present to the patients, all of that. I think that's quite profound what you just said about bringing your whole self to work.
Yeah, and I think that's really important because obviously all parts of you make you and you're not a robot. And particularly when you are patient facing or you're working in a situation where you are public facing, having to hide sort of quite large amounts of who you are. Again, the effort it takes to do that then means that you can't really commit to what your actual true task is because half of it is spent trying to be somebody or hiding parts of you that you really are.
Yeah, that's it's Denise, when you left, you said you grieved and almost had a period of mourning because you'd been there for such a long time. As one of the people that was left behind, I grieve for you going, but listening to you today, and as I said, we've never had this kind of conversation. It makes me also think about the fact that when you're at work, people come and go. Um, and it should always be about them and never about you that's left behind. But seeing how much of a difference being brave enough and courageous enough to take that leap and say that your happiness also matters.
Mm.
I It was all the grieving that I did when you left. It was all worth it, Denise, listening to you now. So, but if somebody else that is listening right now is in that season of transition, is going through the what ifs where things don't make sense. Maybe they're questioning their decision. What would you want them to know?
I guess, I mean, it would be easy for me to say, yes, it'll definitely work out, take the, but I don't, I think what I would say to them is it's not important what you're leaving behind and it's not important what you're going to. They're not the drivers. The driver is what you want in life. Well, for me, I worked full time. I worked full time then. I spent so much of my time at work and when you're not happy at work or when it's not working for you, then it impacts on everything. And I look back now and I think all of those lost years I spent when I was really quite unwell with work related stress, that really wasn't worth it. There was nothing that is worth your own sanity and your happiness. If you are unhappy, you have to move on. And yes, it could be worse, but then you make another change. And then there are two things that you know don't work for you. I think probably I was fortunate in that I think I realized what the sort of thing I needed to move to. And I think when you're in that transition period, the what if transition, it is instead of thinking about, okay, what am I leaving behind? What am I going to? Is thinking, okay, what am I wanting from this change? What is it that is going to make the biggest difference to me? And I think that is the sort of questions you should be asking in those periods.
Amazing. Thank you for that. I think that will definitely be a place that a lot of people will land at. So your input and your insight will definitely help. Denise, how, because again, you'd been there for many years. It's almost all you knew, as you said.
Mm.
Often there's not just us that we're thinking about. There's family members, there's sometimes, in some cases, there's parents, there's partners, there's husbands, wives. How did people kind of react to you wanting to make a change and go from this? I think you described it as, a space that was comfortable and safe.
Mm.
Well, maybe it wasn't so safe because you weren't happy, but others, it looked like it was a
Yeah.
comfortable space. Can you touch on that a little bit?
I think it was a surprise. I remember telling my parents, and they couldn't understand why I was making the move. I think they thought that I would probably just slowly move up the chain, so to speak, at where I was before, and they were just sort of waiting for that to happen. Not that they were bragging about it, but I think it is something that they could understand. And then I was moving to another role, which they did not understand. They didn't know what it was. They didn't really see an obvious route for progression. And I think that worried them a little bit. But for me, it was never about that. I'm not hugely ambitious from that perspective. I want to do the best in the situation I am, and for me, having that balance between what I need to do at work and what I need to do at home is that's what's important to me. And I think being able to be honest with myself and saying that is what I need, rather than just following people and saying, "Oh, I better get this qualification. I better do that. I better do that." Just because you felt you had to. I think I'm quite comfortable saying I'm really happy where I am because this is giving me the life that I want, more or less, and that is okay. And I think it's saying to yourself that this is okay. That this is okay. That you don't have to keep pushing, pushing, pushing. You can just work on making yourself happy.
Yeah. And Denise, thank you for saying that because I think that's such an important thing to come to terms with in your own mind, that you love your parents, you love all of the other people that are in your life, but you're the one that's living that life.
Hmm.
You know, um, we're often taught not to be selfish, to think about everybody else. And I think by deciding that we need to be happy, I think when we make that decision, actually, it does impact the people that are in our lives, and eventually in a good way, because if we're happy, then that's what would make our parents happy as well. It's just that they don't know that at the time. They're in that what if as well when you decide to change. So thank you for that. I assume that they are very happy now, Denise.
Yeah, I think they're just glad that I'm happy. I think though they didn't necessarily know the full story of what was going on, I think they knew it was making me very stressed. And now they can see that work doesn't make me stressed. I mean, obviously there's stresses in different ways, but certainly not that soul destroying unhappiness that I had before.
Yeah. And is there a what next, or are you kind of content where you are for the moment?
So what I was thinking about this earlier, it's there isn't necessarily anything that I think, right, this is going to be my next goal, my next goal. I think I've been really fortunate that more recently, and perhaps because I'm more comfortable and know who I want to be, that the opportunities have come. I've done some great work with Women in Vision. I've done some great work with different organizations that have just grown up. It's not something I particularly looked for. The opportunities have then presented myself. And then you realize, oh, you know what? I really enjoy advocating for the neurodiverse, for instance. And then once you've done one, then more opportunities come. And I found that that is the way that I'm enjoying my life at the moment is just following my passions and my interests.
Amazing. So if there's a listener that has just been really moved by what you've said, Cord, is there a way to follow your works, see what you're up to?
I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. That's probably where you'll find most of it, although
Yep.
less recently, just I guess with time. So that's probably the best place. It's just Denise Voon on LinkedIn.
And thank you for that. Denise, thank you for being willing to really step into this conversation. They're not always easy spaces to articulate, and I just want to salute your openness because I think it will offer something meaningful to somebody that you may never meet, Denise.
Yeah,
You
that's
know?
true. And I've had mentees in my life, and I think one of the first things I ask them is what drives you? What drives you? And I think that is something that I would like people to just go away and think about if they're struggling.
Yeah, and that's a fantastic note to leave the conversation, to give them that little nugget to sit with. So thank you again, Denise, and I look forward to speaking to you soon again.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you so much for listening to What Was, What Next. Every story that we share here is a reminder that life moves in seasons and that the space between what was and what comes next is not a failure, but part of the journey. So if this conversation resonated with you, please do share it with someone who might need to hear it as well. Until next time, take care of yourselves in whatever season you're in. And remember, the season that makes no sense today may be the one that shapes the future for you. So embrace it in all its glory. Till next time.